Hello, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead, and let's get started with the highlights today. I'm going to do another video, explaining why I'm doing this so that it's easier to, point to it rather than explaining it every day. So today, we're going straight to the highlights. Let's start. First one is from 7.5 lessons about the brain. So you don't have an inner lizard or an emotional beast brain. There is no such thing as a limbic system dedicated to emotions, and your misnamed neocortex is not a new part. Many other vertebrates grow the same neurons that in some animals organize into a cerebral cortex if key stages run for long enough. The point of the author here is that it's not simple to divide brains into regions such as neocortex or visual cortex or places which are responsible for sensors or places which are responsible for limbic system and so on. And the book goes on to explain why that's not the case, the plasticity of the brain, and everything that goes around in the evolution of the brain. The point is that these neurons are present in animals as well, and if there has been enough time, it will organize into a cerebral cortex for them as well. So there's nothing special about the neurons itself, and yeah, it's not as simple as that. Okay, there are these parts of the brain which is responsible for this particular system. There is incredible plasticity in brain, and the regions they do reorganize themselves to other purposes. We'll go on for now. 4,000 weeks. The good procrastinator accepts the fact that she can't get everything done, then decides as wisely as possible what tasks to focus on and what to neglect. By contrast, the bad procrastinator finds himself paralyzed precisely because he can't bear the thought of confronting his limitations. So the idea is the idea is that there are procrastination is going to happen. If you're going to deal with objects of non if you're going to deal with non-trivial tasks, procrastination is is the fact, and there are ways to break it up, but again, we have to deal with that, and the highlight, the distinction, that's shown over here by the author, that the good procrastinator accepts that she can't get everything done, and then decides to pick whatever the constraints that's there on the procrastinator, on the person. He's going to decide as wisely as possible what tasks to focus on, prioritize, and so on, and what tasks to neglect. That's the important part. That's repeated in the book again and again. What tasks do you have to neglect? And that's kind of a central premise of the book, I would say, where it's not as simple as that. You make enough time to get something done. Like I said, it's not a conventional time management book. It makes a point that you have to neglect certain tasks, and that's what gives life, that is what gives life meaning. Anyway, the bad procrastinator, by contrast, like the author says, he finds himself paralyzed. It's not about priorities, it's just a question of indecision. He can't move past that stage of indecision. And let's move on. Third one, from getting things done. Trying becomes striving, and striving undoes itself. Social climbers strive to be aristocrats, but their efforts prove them no such thing. Aristocrats do not strive, they've already arrived. Swing is a state of arrival. Okay, I'm kind of missing this. I think I would kind of remember what this was about. So, um, yeah, this might. I think this might come back to me, but for now, I think I have to move on. The Talent War. Okay, so this is a new book in our series, and it's a it's not exactly written the way I would have liked it, but yeah, I mean, of course, I've not written it, so there are good points in the book. It's a useful book, but again, it's the language is somewhat for me. It just didn't align with me. Anyway, so let's read the highlight. Nobody's better than just anybody. An empty position creates short-term problems, but a bad or mediocre hire can have long-lasting ramifications. The point here is that just because you have a position empty, hiring anyone doesn't make sense. It's going to do you harm. Then you might think that the best case is that okay, you would not get as much advantage out of that position as you might have otherwise. But a mediocre hire can actually bring down your team. That there, this is a common thing repeated in many management books. That each individual in the team, it kind of you know they kind of become the so it's like this. If you have a mediocre hire on the team and a high performer now understands that okay, they can go to that level without the risk of any rebuke or without the risk of being fired in the conventional sense. So yeah, ultimately what happens is that the team kind of settles around the level of the mediocre hire or the bad hire. So it's an empty positions. It creates these short-term problems. Yeah, but a bad or mediocre hire will create long-term problems. Okay, one second. Let me get rid of this. Yeah. So moving on. Okay, this is the tweet. I'm going to skip it. It's again a part of a thread. So student focus. When you expose yourself to complex stories about the inner lives of other people over long periods of time, that will repattern your consciousness. You too will become more perceptive, open, and empathetic. If, by contrast, you expose yourself for hours a day to the disconnected fragments of shrieking and fury that dominate social media, your thoughts will start to be shaped like that. Your internal voices will become cruder, louder, less able to hear more tender and gentle thoughts. I think we can relate to this, even though I don't remember if there was kind of a study linking this or establishing this. This book is filled with references to studies. I just don't remember that if this particular assertion is linked to a study. But there was another highlight related to this, about how long form fiction can derive, not derive, sorry, that's the wrong word, can encourage or cultivate empathy in the reader. And the contrast is that if you're going to expose yourself to this tidbit sized stories, the social media typical stories where, for example, Twitter has a length of 280 characters maximum, and other there are no such limitations on other platforms. But again, people would want to limit themselves. They're not going to write long form essays or long form narratives. So yeah, if you're going to expose yourself to that all day, then that's what your thoughts are going to become. Whereas if you expose yourself to complex stories and long form narratives, rich narratives, and you will repattern your consciousness based on that. So the author makes a point that because of social media, how we have been kind of bombarded with social media everywhere. Our whole days are spent around these platforms, and ultimately our psyche as well becomes kind of tuned to this platform. There are of course many other things, many other effects of such platforms, but again the book does not go into it. It kind of does, but not deeply. I mean, this is a subject for other books, and we'll stick to this highlight for now, so we'll move on. This is from originals. When people only touted the presence of their ideas, she quickly concluded that this idea is full of holes. They really haven't thought it through, and they've constructed this slide deck to keep me from figuring it out. When people presented drawbacks or disadvantages, I would become an ally. Instead of telling me, they've given me a problem to solve. So this kind of explains why it is advantageous to show the problems in your own ideas. When you're suggesting ideas to somebody, and if your intention is to sell it, it might backfire because, like the highlight says, the other person is kind of instinctively they're put on a guard that okay, this idea is full of holes. They're just not showing it to me. This happens if somebody approaches you, a salesman approaches you and tells you that this product is excellent and everything is great. There are no problems and no side effects or whatever. There's nothing to worry about. Just buy it, and you're put on your guard that okay, there are no problems. That's too good to be true. Of course, it can't be true. So you're not going to you're not going to believe them. Whereas you present drawbacks, and Like the author says, instead of selling me, they've given me a problem to solve. So let's move on. Extreme ownership. Plans and orders must be communicated in a manner that is simple, clear, and concise. Everyone that is part of the mission must know and understand his or her role in the mission and what to do in the event of likely contingencies. As a leader, it doesn't matter how well you feel you have presented the information or communicated an order, plan, tactic, or strategy. If your team doesn't get it, you have not kept things simple and you have failed. The idea here is simplicity. When you're communicating to your team, it might be a complex problem, but if you cannot make it simple for your team, the author makes a point that you have failed. That the team, if they have not understood the idea, then you have failed. It's not about making it simple for everybody. It's about making it simple for the target audience. In this case, the target audience is your team. So if there is kind of a confusion, if there is that, okay, what if this means something else, or what if this means something else, and when contingencies arrive, of course they will, right? And your team doesn't get it, they can't decide because they've not completely understood the context of the problem space and everything, because you have not communicated to them as the leader, then you have failed. And that's the point, that the simplicity, it is hard, it is not easy. Simplicity is one of the hardest things you will do. It's very very easy to keep the orders complicated, keep the context complicated in the language only you can understand. It's very simple to do that, because if you can understand it, it is very simple to you. When you're trying to make it simple, that is when you start to think about it from others' point of view. And if it's a large team, if it's a sizable team, you'll have to think of it from multiple points of view. And that's hard. And that is why it is so difficult to do simple things. Let's move on. Student focus. We have fundamental limitations, Adam added. We could ignore them and pretend we're capable of everything we would wish, or we can acknowledge them and live our lives in a better way. So, this is, like I said before, it's like kind of the central premise of the book, that okay, no, this is I'm talking about the other book, I'm talking about 4000 weeks, but this student focus also kind of comes towards the same point, that we have fundamental limitations. You can't fight against, you can't say that, okay, I'll control my social media usage, I'm going to be fine. I can control my other patterns, like other habits, like processed food and everything, that's okay, I can still control what I do and I'll be fine. And if we believe that, nothing's going to be fine. It's a constant struggle. It's a constant fight it's a constant drain on your willpower and on your body, and you can't win that in the long term. So we have fundamental limitations, and if we can acknowledge them, if we can accept them, we know how to live our lives in a better way then, and because we can live our life around that. We don't have to fight those things. Those are the things that make us human. Like I said, that's the premise of the book, 4000 weeks, which we just discussed earlier. Moving on, 7.5 lessons about the brain again. A mind is something that emerges from a transaction between your brain and your body, while they are surrounded by other brains in bodies that are immersed in a physical world and constructing a social world. In one of the chapters, the author makes this connection that, what is mind. Yeah, we have a brain. If you open your skull, you can see your brain, and you have your body, the rest of your body. And what is mind though? Can you see the mind? Is this something that you can identify? Okay, this function is by the mind and this function is by the brain. And turns out you can't, at least not on a physical sense, right? But what is, like, how do you explain mind? And the author makes this case that it emerges from a transaction between your body and the brain. Your body is many things. One of the things is senses, and but there are many other things that body is involved into, and the body is responsible for, and that that kind of links into the brain, different areas of the brain, and the brain links back into the body. It's an incredible network. The book explains it very well. I don't think I can do it justice over here. But now take it further. You have other brains in body, as in other people, and in a complex social arena, and that is what leads to this presence of mind. So the point over here is, it's not just you yourself that make up your mind, but it's also the social reality. And we've seen that, based on how culture impacts people, they have very different understanding of reality. They have, for example, things, like very obvious things, as in our understanding of time, for example. Different cultures have different understanding of such basic realities. So it's an incredible read. I mean, it does not go too deep into the cultural aspects. It does mention it, but this book does not go too deep into the cultural aspects of different, different cultures. But there are other books, of course, which go further into it, where they explain that, okay, uh, for example, a lot of books kind of divide the thought model into Western philosophies and Eastern philosophies. Western philosophies are, the Western European philosophies, and of course Americas, whereas compared to Eastern philosophies, the ancient ones, and how differently they see the concept of individuals and time and everything. So mind is something that's not just a transaction between you and your body, but also a transaction in the social arena, social world of other people, other brains and bodies, like the author says. Let's move on. Deep work. Okay, I've read this, but long back, and I didn't make any highlights. So let's see, 3 to 4 hours a day, 5 days a week of uninterrupted and carefully directed concentration. It turns out can produce a lot of valuable output. Yeah, fair enough. I think it's fairly straightforward. I'm not going to talk more about it. I think the video is long enough for today. So that's the end of the highlights for today. And as you can see, it's like a constant improvement for myself. Forcing me to think and forcing me to explain things better with the context. So it's been fun. It's been yeah. It's yeah, let me say it. It's been difficult doing this every day, but it's been fun also, and I'm looking forward to keep doing it. Thank you for watching.